Welcome back in. 365 Sports on your Friday. Paul, Catalina, Smokey, and Craig are on their way to Midway. I'm wrapping up the show here, and then we'll join them shortly. But one of the big games this weekend, maybe the biggest in college football this weekend, Florida at Tennessee. This is an old school rivalry that for a long time has been out of balance, and it was one of the best rivalries of the 90s, early 2000s, especially in the late 90s when both those teams were going really, really well. Brent Hubbs of VolQuest.com joins us now. Brent, what's it like to see this game be relevant again?
Well, it's fun. It's why you cover college football, and it's not just game day in town. It's just the big game feel, the excitement of the fan base, sold out stadium. This is what you're supposed to be doing in college football. This is what you want college football to be. It's why Kansas is so special this weekend, right? Because they haven't been there. Tennessee's trying to get back to where they were when so many of these games were like this, and they just haven't had that. They've had some moments. They had Oklahoma in town, great crowd. They couldn't finish that one off in overtime in the Bush Jones era. Bush Jones did beat Florida in 2016, the last time game day was here. But it's just not been on a regular basis like it was in the late 90s, early 2000s, as you mentioned.
Now, this is a team in Tennessee that has had a really nice start to the season, that whatever Pitt has got people, believing, and also it doesn't feel like one of those things like, okay, yeah, you had a nice win, but, they've had those in the past, that Josh Heupel's really building something. Do you sense an air of confidence about this team that hasn't been there in a while?
Yeah, I do, and I think the biggest reason why is quarterback. I think for the first time in a while, I think Tennessee fans and Tennessee people, university people, athletic department people, feel like they're going to this game with an advantage at the quarterback position because of the way that Hendon Hooker's played. Tennessee, through the years here and all their multiple coaches, have had moments where they had good quarterback play. Josh Dobbs certainly jumps out there. But it's been since Dobbs that they've had quarterback play like they're getting right now out of Hendon Hooker. And frankly, Hooker's more productive than Dobbs was in terms of passing the football. Part of that's due to Josh Heupel's system, but Tennessee's got a quarterback that can go. And I promise you, if you look at everybody around the country who's ranked high, one of the things that jumps out about that team is they got a quarterback who can make their team go.
Yeah, and Hendon Hooker, a lot of people, I was surprised to see his rushing numbers because I always think of him, some of those rushing touchdowns he has. He has really improved through the air to where it's almost, pick your poison, and he's not really what you'd call a running quarterback anymore.
He's not. I think he's gotten much more comfortable throwing the football, particularly vertically down the field. When he arrived from Virginia Tech, one of the knocks on him was he was a dump-off guy. He always took the check down. And part of the reason why he didn't win the job over Joe Milton to start the season last year was he was too conservative in spring practice and fall camp. He didn't let her rip. And then once he got in the game and got the opportunity to start playing and found some success and really opened up, his part of the passing game by being willing to throw it down the field, which you have to do in this offense, his game has really taken off. And his legs are still a big part of it. I think his legs are going to be important in this game. When you look at this matchup, Utah's quarterback rushed for 90 yards against Florida in week number 1. And then last week, Florida gave up over 100 yards to South Florida's running quarterback. So Hooker doesn't have to run for 100, but he's got to run enough to keep Florida completely honest and make sure Florida can stop a running quarterbacks, which they've struggled to do thus far this season.
Yeah, Gary Bohannon, we know him well, came from Baylor. So, had Florida on the ropes. What are the thoughts about Florida? They had that great opening win at home against Utah, but since then they lost to Kentucky and really looked sluggish last week for most of the game against South Florida. This is a team that's better under Billy Napier, but they still got to get the guys. But how do you feel about the matchup with them going in?
Well, I think it comes down for Florida. It's the unknowns of Anthony Richardson at quarterback. Is he going to be cut it loose and run around and do the things we saw him do in the Utah game where he rushed for 3 touchdowns and 100 yards? He's not done that since that game. He's been a little bit banged up. They're really suspect behind him at the quarterback position. I think Florida's been a little bit conservative in terms of how much they've cut Anthony Richardson loose. And I don't know that he's been very confident to run the football. if you can make Richardson stand in the pocket, then I think defensive coordinators feel like they've got a great shot to defend Florida because he hasn't proven he can be a consistent passer. The best thing he's done is create plays with his legs and scramble drills or just in absolute quarterback runs. So I think the big question about Florida in this game is how does Anthony Richardson play? For Florida to have a chance to win it, I think he has to play really, really well. And then the other thing for Tennessee is can they contain a mobile quarterback and stop the Florida ground attack? A year ago, Matt Corral came in here for Ole Miss, and Lane Kiffin looked at Tennessee's defense and said, we're just going to run quarterback power until you stop it. And Tennessee didn't stop it. Corral ran for 190 yards against Tennessee. So can Tennessee stop a mobile quarterback if Anthony Richardson decides to tuck and run?
What is your favorite memory of this rivalry?
Oh, goodness. I was standing on the field in 98 when Tennessee won in overtime and beat Spurrier for the first time and got that monkey off of Fulmer's back. And obviously the place just exploded with fans on the field everywhere. The 2001 game in December was the closest thing I've covered to a college football playoff game before there was a playoff game. I mean, that's the way fans had always wanted that game late in the year to decide the division. Two top 5 teams going at each other in Florida, and just a whale of a football game. So the 0-1 game was probably the more impressive game. The 98 game carried more significance for Tennessee. James Wilhoit going from GOAT to hero. You miss the extra point, you come back and kick a 50-yarder to win. You don't see that very often. And then on the flip side of that, there's a lot of scars for Tennessee fans. You got the Gaffney catch, no catch in 2000. Tennessee's lost on 2 fourth-down plays at the end of the game in the Butch Jones era. They found a bunch of ways to lose this game in this series. The question is, can they find a way to win this game on Saturday with the college football world watching?
I know he's gotten an extension already, and the fans love him. But what is the overall feeling about Josh Heupel right now?
Oh, they love him. I mean, he's playing an exciting brand of football. They're scoring points. They're relevant. They're ranked. They went on the road and beat a ranked opponent on a day where they didn't play their best. Players speak glowingly of him, talk about how enjoyable he is to play for. Josh Heupel's not backed away from anything this week. He's not gone into a shell, and he's not been testy, and he's not tried to clamp down media. He's not done anything like that. He has taken the approach this week of we welcome the stage. We enjoy it. We worked hard to get here. We got to go prepare to play on it. But there's a lot of confidence and competitiveness with Josh Heupel, and I think the Tennessee fans like that. The other thing, too, and this is not a knock on the previous guys, but it doesn't sound like it is. Josh Heupel's got an identity. He's got a plan. You know what he wants to be on offense. We now know what they want to be on defense. They have a brand. And quite frankly, Tennessee has not had a brand in a long time. And I think that's something Tennessee fans are really enjoying because they can get a sense of what this program is and what its identity is.
One of the things I say on the show all the time is a lot of fans discount who the athletic director is and what their plan is. I think Tennessee is the exact example of that. Is Danny White comes in, again, gives the athletic department a new identity and has an overall plan and kind of breaks the mold of let's let this ex-alumni coach, whoever, big shot, do this job. Tennessee and USC, to me, are kind of the poster children for you get the right athletic director, all of a sudden your brand is back.
Well, yeah, and the one thing I'll give Danny White credit for is he is walking that tightrope, which is very difficult to walk, between innovation and tradition. He wants to uphold the traditions of Tennessee and all the things that make Tennessee what's made Tennessee for so long. He doesn't want to lose any of that. But he's also not caught up in, well, that's how we did it back then. Because he wasn't here when they did it back then that way. He respects that, but he also brings innovation to it. And I'll say this, other than football, he inherited an athletic department that was really stable. Baseball coach, stable, successful. Basketball coach, women's basketball coach, and Coach Harper's done a nice job. They were a little further along outside of football. Now, football is a disaster, and football is how you're judged. But he's been able to focus himself and channel everything on football because some of that other stuff has been really stable. He's not had to mess with. But again, the best thing he's doing right now is threading that line between innovation and new ideas and not losing tradition in the process.
Brent Hubbs, VolQuest.com with us here on 365 Sports. Brent, enjoy the game tomorrow. I'm infinitely jealous of you being there. It's, again, I'm a Florida State fan, but I grew up in Florida, rooting, against the Gators. But I will tell you, that's one of my favorite games all the time is Tennessee, Florida. Always tune in, always watch it, and always wanted to be at one, especially up there in Knoxville. So enjoy the game tomorrow. I'm sure it's going to be a doozy.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. Should be a wild scene in Knoxville, that's for sure.
Brent Hubbs, VolQuest.com with us on 365 Sports. Sam Bradshaw, S11 is next